The day Elijah Walker was arrested, his wife cried harder than anyone in the courtroom. She gripped the wooden railing with both hands. Her shoulders shook. Her mascara ran in dark rivers down her cheeks, and the sound she made, that low, fractured wail, pulled every eye in the room toward her. The bailiff paused. The judge looked up from his papers. Even the prosecutor softened for just a moment, glancing sideways at this woman who appeared to be watching her entire world dissolve. Everyone saw a devoted wife. Nobody saw what Elijah would eventually see. 12 days after she called him a burden, he would return in a Lamborghini. But that man, the one who steps out of that car in a perfect suit with Warren Ashford beside him, that man is built from everything that happens between this moment and that one. And you need to understand who Elijah was before they broke him to fully appreciate what it meant when he refused to stay broken. Elijah Walker was not a flashy man. He drove a clean but aging Ford F-150. He wore the same 3 Blazers on rotation for business meetings. His neighbors in Decatur, Georgia knew him as the man who shoveled driveways without being asked and kept his lawn trimmed even during the worst stretches of his life. He owned 6 rental properties across metro Atlanta. Nothing palatial, but clean and reliable, housing working families and generating steady income. He also ran Walker Logistics, a small transportation company operating 8 vans contracted with medical facilities across the city. He had started it at 31 with a single van and a handshake deal with a rehabilitation center in Buckhead. By 38, he employed 14 people and had just signed a contract with a regional hospital network worth more than anything he had imagined possible when he was a teenager, telling himself he would one day own something real. He was proud, not loud about it, just quietly, permanently proud. And he had Vanessa. They had met at charity fundraiser in College Park, both there for different reasons, ending up at the same table when the seating ran out. She was finishing a master's degree in communications. She laughed at things that actually deserved laughter. Elijah was cautious with people by nature. He moved slowly, asked real questions, and listened to the answers. Vanessa, at that table with the bad centerpiece and the lukewarm chicken, had answered questions honestly in a way that surprised him. 3 years later, they were married. 1 year after that, Ava was born. Ava changed everything. Not in the dramatic way people describe when they haven't truly felt it, but in the permanent way. The way that rewires every circuit in you and makes every decision you ever made feel like it was leading toward the specific person. Elijah would wake at 5 in the morning for work and stop in Ava's doorway first, just to watch her breathe, just to confirm she was real. That was a man sitting in courtroom 4B of the Fulton County Courthouse on a Tuesday in October, listening to a prosecutor explain in crisp, measured sentences that $214,000 had been systematically redirected from Walker Logistics operating accounts through a series of shell transfers over 11 months. The transactions bore his digital signature, his login credentials, his IP address. His attorney, Corvin Hughes, had told him the night before arraignment that whoever constructed this was sophisticated. This wasn't a sloppy theft. It was built carefully, piece by piece, over nearly a year, by someone with intimate access to his business operations. Elijah had no idea who that was. He would find out, but not yet. Before we go any further, if you've ever trusted someone completely and later discovered that trust was the exact weapon they used against you, then you already know what's coming. Drop a comment with the word loyalty if the story is already hitting close to home, and stay with it, because the way it ends will hit differently than you expect. Vanessa cried through the arraignment. She cried through the bail hearing, where bail was denied. She posted on social media that evening a single photograph of her wedding ring, no caption, and the comments filled with prayers and broken heart emojis from people who believed they were watching a devoted woman carry an impossible weight. The trial lasted 9 days. Corvin fought hard. He called a forensic accountant who testified that the transaction pattern looked more like structured external manipulation than owner-operated embezzlement. The prosecution countered with bank statements connecting to accounts open in Elijah's name, with his identification, his social security number. The jury deliberated 11 hours. Guilty on 2 counts of financial fraud. Guilty on 1 count of tax evasion. For years, eligible for release after 22 months on good conduct. Elijah stood when the verdict was read. He didn't flinch. He turned to look at Vanessa before the bailiff reached him, searching her face with the specific look a person gives when they know the truth and are powerless to stop what's happening. The look that says, "I believe you." He found something. But later, much later, he would understand it wasn't that look at all. Prison breaks you in portions. The first portion is disorientation, the loss of control over every small decision you've been making unconsciously your whole life. The second portion is distance. Elijah's first phone call to Ava came 3 weeks in. She was 7. He had prepared carefully, thinking through how to make a 7-year-old understand that her father was still her father no matter where he was sleeping. "Daddy," she said, then quietly, "Did you really steal?" He closed his eyes. He told her no. He told her he loved her more than anything. He told her the truth always came out. She said, "Okay." She didn't sound convinced. By month 4, she spoke in single sentences. By month 7, she said almost nothing. By month 10, she told him her teacher had said people in prison had made bad choices. "Do you believe that?" Elijah asked. A long pause. "I don't know," she said. He hung up and sat alone in his cell for the rest of the night, not crying, just sitting with the understanding that the most painful thing a person can lose is not their freedom, their money, or their reputation. It's their child's certainty about them. 22 months and 11 days after he entered, Elijah walked out of Autry State Prison on a Thursday morning in August. New evidence had surfaced 2 months earlier. A whistleblower inside a financial services firm had flagged a pattern of fraudulent account creation that matched, structurally, the secondary accounts used in the Walker case. The state's attorney reviewed the file. Charges were dismissed. No formal apology. No announcement. Just a stamped document and a gate swinging open. Corvin met him at the gate and drove mostly in silence toward Atlanta. When Elijah asked what he wasn't saying, Corvin kept his eyes on the road. "I think it's better you see it for yourself," he said. The house in Decatur looked the same from the outside. Same oak tree, same mailbox, same flagstone walkway Elijah had laid himself the summer before Ava was born. But the driveway was empty, and when he opened the front door, his keys still worked. The wrongness hit him immediately. The furniture was reduced to basics. The custom shelving stripped. The photographs that had lined the hallway, him and Vanessa, the 3 of them together, Ava's yearly portraits from infancy, gone. Faint discolored rectangles on the paint where the frames used to hang. Home office, empty. Garage, no vehicles. The rental properties he would discover, sold. His investment account, liquidated. Walker Logistics, whose assets had been frozen during trial, quietly dissolved. Vanessa came in while he was standing in the kitchen. She was wearing a dress he didn't recognize, her hair in a style she hadn't worn when he left. She stopped when she saw him, not with shock, with something more prepared. "You're out," she said. "Charges dismissed. I'm innocent. The evidence proved it." She set her grocery bags on a counter and began unpacking them. "I know. Where is everything, Vanessa?" "I did what I had to do," she said. "I had bills. Ava had needs. You weren't here. I wasn't here because I was wrongly convicted. I didn't know that at the time." He looked at her profile. The practice calm. The way she didn't meet his eyes directly. He thought about the short calls, the silences, the performance of the devoted wife that had played out publicly for 22 months, while everything he had built was quietly dismantled behind it. "Where's Ava?" he asked. "School. You can see her on weekends. I think structure is better for her." And he walked out. He stood under the oak tree at the end of the flagstone path. He had $14, a watch, and nothing else. Most men would have collapsed there, and maybe part of Elijah did. Maybe part of him shattered quietly on that sidewalk in a way he would never fully describe to anyone. But another part, the part built over 40 years of watching his father show up without complaint, simply turned and started walking. He didn't know toward what. He just knew that standing still was finished. 6 months passed. He found a room on Glenwood Avenue, $380 a month, a twin mattress, a presswood dresser, a radiator that made confessional sounds at 3 in the morning. He worked construction during the day for a contractor named Burl Haddon who paid cash on Fridays. He did delivery shifts at night. He saved every dollar he could. He saw Ava on Saturday mornings, always waiting at the curb, never going to the door. They went to the public library on Ponce de Leon, where she loved the graphic novel section, to the botanical garden during free admission hours, to a diner on Flat Shoals where the menu never changed. She was warming back to him, slowly, the way a child does when they've been handed a conflicting story about someone they love, and are quietly sorting through it on their own terms. Elijah listened to everything she said like it was the most important information he'd ever received, because it was. The family gathering was Trevor's idea. It always was. Vanessa's older brother had organized a birthday lunch for their mother Claudette at her home in Stonecrest. Trevor was the kind of man who framed his own convenience as everyone else's obligation and had a talent for positioning himself at the center of every room he entered. He had partially funded Claudette's house and never let anyone forget it. Elijah came only because Ava wanted him there. He should have left after an hour. Trevor had put on weight since the trial. He wore it like evidence of something. He stood near the kitchen island holding a glass of something amber and talked loudly about a development project outside Conyers that was, according to him, going to be transformational. Elijah ate quietly. He answered questions when asked. He watched Ava help her grandmother arrange flowers in a vase and held on to that image like a handhold. Then Trevor started, gradual at first. A comment about construction work. Hard work suits some people. A question about Elijah's living situation. That wasn't really a question. A reference to the trial framed as sympathy, but delivered with the precision of a man who wanted everyone to remember the verdict before they remembered the dismissal. Then Trevor looked at him directly, with the ease of a man who had never faced real consequences, and said, "You know what I respect? The hustle. Genuinely. But there's a difference between rebuilding and treading water." A few people laughed. Vanessa smiled. Elijah put his fork down. "You lost the properties," Trevor continued. "Lost the business. Lost the house. How long you planning to drive other people around before you accept that some chapters just close?" The room was quiet. Everyone watching. Ava had gone completely still. Elijah looked at his daughter's face, searching him, measuring him, and he thought about what would cost her to watch her father respond with anger, what would confirm for her. He said nothing. He began reaching for his jacket, and that was when Vanessa said it, not privately, not as a whisper. In the middle of that room, with her brother 3 feet away and her mother at the table and 4 family members within earshot. "Honestly, Elijah, at this point, you're just a burden." The silence that followed was the loudest thing he had ever heard. He looked at her once. Then he walked out. He sat in his car outside Claudette's house for 7 minutes. He watched the clock. Then he drove home. He sat on the edge of the twin mattress. He was not angry. He was something past anger, colder, cleaner. The clarity that arrives when the last thin layer of illusion finally burns away and you can see a situation exactly as it is. He took out a legal pad from the dresser drawer. He wrote one line at the top. Day 1. He circled it. He had one asset nobody had touched. A 2009 Ford Transit van, engine seized, 2 flat tires, body dented along the rear left panel. Sitting in a storage unit off Memorial Drive, since before the trial. Registered to an older LLC he hadn't fully dissolved, overlooked during the asset freeze on both sides. He retrieved it the next morning. Spent 4 days repairing it himself. Rebuilt engine from a salvage yard in Forest Park, new tires, borrowed dent kit, touch-up paint. A mechanic named Dorian, who had worked for Walker Logistics in the early years, helped without being asked. By day 5, the van ran. He registered with 3 ride-share platforms the same afternoon. He drove from 6 in the morning until midnight. He slept in the room. He ate cheaply. He saved everything. He was not rebuilding a company yet. He was rebuilding the man who could build a company. You have to do the second one before you can do the first. Ava's birthday fell on day 8. She was turning 9. He had been saving since day 1, squeezing every dollar, but an emergency brake line on day 6 had taken most of it. He bought a bracelet from a kiosk at the mall on Candler Road, silver-toned with a small book charm. $11. He knew it wasn't enough. He folded the tissue paper carefully so it looked intentional. Ava opened the gift bag on the porch of the Decatur house. She was wearing a birthday dress, white with yellow trim. Behind her, balloons, streamers, the smell of an elaborate breakfast. Trevor's car in the driveway. She looked at the bracelet. Then she looked up, not with cruelty. She was 9 and incapable of it, but with a gentle, heartbreaking confusion about the gap between what she was holding and what she had been learning to expect from the people in her life. "It's nice," she said quietly. "I thought you liked the book charm," Elijah said. "Because you're a reader." Trevor appeared in the hallway. He looked at the gift bag. He looked at Elijah. He smiled the way men smile when they've won something and want you to know without saying it. "Come on, birthday girl," he said, hand on Ava's shoulder. "Your real surprise is in the backyard." Ava glanced at Elijah once. Then she turned and went inside. Elijah stood on the porch alone. He put the tissue paper back in the bag. He drove to his next pickup. Day 9, Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Late afternoon. The rideshare app sent him to the arrivals level. A name on the screen, W. Ashford, private. The man who climbed into the back seat was 72, slight, dressed in the way of wealthy men who had stopped needing to prove it. A plain charcoal blazer, dark trousers, shoes that were expensive only to people who knew what to look for. He settled in and said, "Buckhead, I'll give you the exact address once we're moving." They drove in silence for several minutes. Then the man said, "Long day or long life?" Elijah glanced in the rear-view mirror. "Sir, your face is carrying something. I've watched people long enough to know the difference between tired from today and tired from longer than that." "Longer than today," Elijah said. "Warren Ashford." "Elijah Walker." "What do you do, Elijah Walker, when you're not driving?" Something about the directness of it, the absence of pity, the plain fact of being asked who he was rather than what had happened to him. Made Elijah answer honestly. He talked for the rest of the drive. Not everything, just the shape of it, the company he had built, the transportation business, the way he still thought in systems, the way he was rebuilding, because he didn't know how to be a man who didn't build things. Warren Ashford listened without offering advice, without filling pauses with reassurance. Just listened, with the attentiveness of a man who had built a great deal by understanding people accurately. When they arrived, Warren said, "Thank you for conversation." "Thank you for asking," Elijah said. He drove 2 blocks and stopped. The suitcase was in the back seat, black, hard-shell, medium-sized. He hadn't noticed it leave with the passenger. He opened it. Bundled cash. Bond certificates stacked in a leather folio. Legal documents bearing names of companies he recognized from business news. A sealed envelope with Warren Ashford's name embossed in the return address corner. He didn't count it. He didn't need to. He called Corvin. Got Warren's contact within 40 minutes. Called him directly. "Mr. Ashford, I drove you from Hartsfield this evening. You left something in my van. How significant?" Warren asked. Elijah looked at the suitcase. "Significant? Where are you?" He returned it that same night. He sat in Warren Ashford's living room and pushed the suitcase across the coffee table. Warren opened it, checked the contents, closed it. "What do you want?" he asked. "Nothing," Elijah said. "It's not mine." Warren studied him. "There are men who would have been on a plane by morning." "I know," Elijah said. "You're not one of them." "No." Warren stood, produced an envelope, a finder's fee. Elijah shook his head. "Why not?" Elijah thought about how to explain it. The legal pad, the circled day one, the fragile architecture of what he was building inside himself, the fact that taking a shortcut right now would compromise the only thing he still fully controlled, the quality of his choices. "Because it would change the reason I returned it," he said. Warren set the envelope down. He looked at Elijah Walker for a long time. "All right," he said quietly. Elijah drove home, climbed the stairs, lay on the twin mattress, stared at the ceiling. He did not know that 20 minutes after he left, Warren Ashford made a phone call to a woman named Delphine Cross, his head of private investigations, and said, "I need everything on a man named Elijah Walker. Not his record, not his credit. I need to know who he is." He did not know that Delphine had already started. He wrote day 10 on the legal pad. He turned off the light. Outside, things were already moving that he couldn't yet see. Delphine Cross had spent 15 years finding out what people were made of when they didn't know they were being watched. She was methodical, patient, and completely without sentimentality about human nature. In her experience, most people were exactly who they appeared to be, which made the ones who weren't all the more interesting. Elijah Walker was interesting from the first hour. She began with the public record, the arrest, the trial transcripts, the dismissal, the whistleblower case that had triggered the review. She read everything twice, slowly, the way she always did with files that had been officially resolved, because official resolution and actual truth were two different categories, and she had learned never to confuse them. Then she began surveillance. Day 1 of the investigation. Elijah driving through a storm at 6 in the morning, wipers working hard, visibility poor, picking up a passenger who had waited 30 minutes for another driver to cancel. He didn't mention the wait time. He didn't ask for a tip acknowledgement. He just drove. Day 2. Vanessa at a shopping center in Midtown. New handbag, new shoes, lunch with a woman Delphine identified as a college friend. Conversation light, laughter easy. She appeared unburdened. That evening, Elijah ate a gas station sandwich in his van between rides. Delphine noted both. Day 3. Trevor Okafor, Vanessa's older brother, the man Delphine had already flagged as a person of interest based on Elijah's background, arriving at a financial services office in Sandy Springs. The office belonged to a small private firm called Crestview Capital Group. Delphine knew that name. It appeared in the whistleblower report that had eventually freed Elijah. Not prominently. A footnote, a peripheral connection. The kind of thing that gets overlooked when investigators are focused on closing a case rather than fully understanding one. She pulled the thread. What unraveled over the next 36 hours was the kind of thing that makes even experienced investigators sit back from their screens. Trevor Okafor had a relationship with Crestview Capital Group that predated Elijah's arrest by 2 years. A consulting arrangement, informal, paid in transfers that moved through 3 intermediary accounts before reaching Trevor. The payments were modest at first. Then they increased sharply in the months immediately before Walker Logistics accounts were compromised. The fraudulent accounts, the ones open in Elijah's name that had anchored the prosecution's case, had been created through a credential harvesting scheme. Someone had obtained Elijah's personal and business documentation, his identification, his social security number, his business account login architecture. That information didn't exist in the public domain. It existed in 2 places: Elijah's own records and the record of anyone with sustained, intimate access to his household and business operations. Trevor had both. He had helped Elijah set up the original LLC structure for Walker Logistics in the early years, when the business was new and Elijah had trusted the people closest to him with the details that mattered. Trevor had recommended the initial bank. Trevor had been in the house regularly for years. Trevor had access to documents Elijah had never thought to protect from family. And Crestview Capital Group, Delphine discovered, had been positioning itself to acquire distressed transportation assets in the metro Atlanta area. Walker Logistics, its contracts, its fleet, its hospital network deal would have been exactly the kind of asset they were targeting. Except the acquisition had never happened, because when Walker Logistics dissolved, the hospital contract terminated and the value evaporated, which meant Trevor had destroyed Elijah for a deal that ultimately didn't even pay out. He had framed his sister's husband, sent him to prison for nearly 2 years, watched his niece lose her father, and dismantled a man's entire life for a transaction that collapsed before it could benefit anyone. Delphine sat with that for a moment. Then she compiled everything into a file, attached the supporting documentation, and called Warren Ashford. "You need to see this," she said. Warren read the file that night. He sat in the same chair where Elijah had pushed the suitcase across the coffee table, and he read slowly, the way he did with things that deserved to be taken seriously. When he finished, he set the file down. He thought about the man who had returned millions when he had nothing, who had refused a finder's fee not out of pride but out of an integrity so precise it had its own internal logic. who had driven 16-hour days in a repaired van and eaten gas station sandwiches, and still showed up to his daughter's birthday with a bracelet he couldn't afford and a belief that the book charm would mean something to her. He thought about what Trevor Okafor had done with that same amount of time. Warren Ashford had built a fortune by understanding one thing clearly. The most valuable commodity in any organization was not intelligence, not capital, not connections. It was character. Character was the only thing that held up under real pressure, and it was the only thing you could manufacture or purchase or fake indefinitely. He had been looking for a partner for his transportation expansion for 8 months. Someone who understood logistics from the inside out. Someone with the operational instinct that only came from having done every job in the chain yourself. Someone he could trust completely. He picked up the phone and called his attorney. "I need partnership documents drafted," he said, "and I need the Lamborghini ready by Tuesday morning." Day 11. Elijah didn't know any of this. He drove his routes. He worked his hours. He wrote day 11 on the legal pad before bed and lay in the dark listening to the radiator. He thought about Ava. He thought about the way she looked at him across the table at Claudette's house on the day Vanessa had said those words. Searching him, measuring him. And he thought about what it would take to become the man she deserved to find when she finally looked clearly. He thought about that more than the Lamborghini. More than any of it. Day 12 began like every other day. Elijah was up at 5:30. He made coffee in the shared kitchen downstairs. He checked the rideshare app. He went out to the van. His phone rang at 7:43. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Walker. A woman's voice. Composed, direct. "My name is Delphine Cross. I work for Warren Ashford. He'd like to meet with you this morning, if you're available. There are some things you need to know." Elijah sat in the driver's seat of the van, in the parking area off Glenwood. "What kind of things?" he asked. "The kind," Delphine said, "that explain everything that happened to you." He sat across from Warren Ashford at 9 in the morning. Delphine placed a file on the table between them. Elijah read it. He read it slowly, the way Warren had read it. Because some things deserve to be taken seriously, and the truth about how your life was taken from you is one of them. He read about Trevor's relationship with Crestview Capital, the consulting payments, the timing, the credential harvesting, the accounts built in his name, the deal that was supposed to happen and never did. He read about his own trial. Now seen from the outside, the full architecture of it visible for the first time, the way each piece had been placed deliberately, the sophistication of it. He sat with the file, closed in front of him for a long moment. "Vanessa knew," he said. It wasn't a question. Delphine answered anyway. "She found out approximately 4 months after your conviction. Our investigators found communication between her and Trevor. She confronted him privately. He convinced her that going forward would destroy the family, and that you would likely serve your time and recover. She chose him." Elijah said. "She chose her brother." Delphine said. "Yes." The room was quiet. Warren watched Elijah carefully. The way he processed this, the way his jaw set and then released, the way grief and fury moved to his face in a single long wave and then settled into something steadier, something purposeful. "What do you want to do?" Warren asked. Elijah looked at him. "I want my daughter to know the truth," he said. "About everything. About her father. About what was done to him. I want it said clearly, in front of everyone who was there, when she watched me walk out of that house with nothing." Warren nodded. "And I want Ava to hear it from me," Elijah continued, "before anyone else explains it to her." Warren nodded again. "Then let's make sure she does," he said. He looked at Delphine. "Get the lawyers, get the documentation filed with the county DA, and get the car." The Lamborghini arrived at Elijah's boarding house on Glenwood Avenue at 10:15. It was pearl white. It sat outside the building like a statement. Like the universe had decided to be theatrical about something for once. Elijah stood on the sidewalk looking at it. Warren came up beside him. "Your attorneys will meet us there. The documentation has already been transmitted to the district attorney's office. Trevor will be facing charges by end of week. And Vanessa?" Warren let that land before answering. "Accessory after the fact. At minimum. Her attorneys will negotiate. But she knew, Elijah, she knew for 8 months before your release, and she said nothing. Elijah was quiet. "You ready?" Warren asked. Elijah thought about the legal pad. Day 1 circled. The van with the seized engine. The bracelet with the book charm. The birthday porch. The 7 minutes in the parking area outside Claudette's house, when he had decided something without fully naming it. "Yes," he said. The Lamborghini pulled into the neighborhood in Decatur at 11 in the morning. The sound alone was enough to bring people to their windows. By the time it turned onto the street, 3 neighbors were already outside. Phones came out. A woman walking a dog stopped completely. An older man from 2 doors down stood on his porch with his coffee cup suspended halfway to his mouth. The car stopped in front of the house. The driver's door opened. An expensive shoe touched the pavement. Elijah stepped out. Perfect charcoal suit. No tie. Posture that didn't announce itself but couldn't be ignored. The kind of presence that comes not from what you're wearing, but from what you survived. Warren stepped out from the passenger side. The crowd that had formed on the sidewalk didn't know Warren Ashford by face. But something in the gravity of his stillness told them he was someone significant. 3 attorneys walked up the path behind them. Vanessa opened the door before they reached it. She must have seen the car from a window. Her expression moved through several things in quick succession. Confusion, recognition, something that tried to be composure and didn't fully become it. Trevor was inside. Elijah could see him in the hallway, holding his phone, already reading something on the screen that was making his face change color. "Elijah," Vanessa started. "I need Ava," he said. Calm, no anger in his voice. "Before anything else happens, I need my daughter." Vanessa stood in the doorway, then a voice from inside the house. Small, certain, already running. "Daddy." Ava appeared in the hallway behind Vanessa. She was in her school clothes. She must have been home for lunch or a half day. Elijah hadn't known, hadn't planned it. But there she was. She looked at him on the porch. She looked at the car behind him. Then she ran. She came through the door past her mother and threw herself at Elijah with the full force of a 9-year-old who had been carrying confusion for 2 years and had just put it down. He caught her and held her, and she pressed her face into his shoulder and cried with the unguarded honesty that children have before the world teaches them to manage it. "Daddy, I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I'm sorry." "Hey," he said. He held her tighter. "You don't have anything to be sorry for. You hear me? Nothing." He held her for a long time. The attorneys waited. Warren waited. The neighbors on the sidewalk, who had come out for the car, stayed for something they hadn't expected to witness. This was the moment, not the Lamborghini, not the money, not the public reckoning that was about to happen. This was the moment. When Elijah finally set Ava down, he kept his hand on her shoulder and turned toward the door. The lead attorney, a sharp, unhurried woman named Camille Voss, who Warren used for high-stakes civil cases, stepped forward and presented Trevor with the documentation package. Fraud, forgery, identity theft, conspiracy, the Crestview Capital connection, the fabricated accounts, the structured payments, all of it dated, sourced, supported. Trevor read the cover page. He looked up. Something left his face permanently in that moment. The comfortable assurance of a man who had always believed he was smarter than the consequences. "This is," he started, "filed with the district attorney's office this morning." Camille said, "You want to call your attorney." Trevor looked at Elijah. Elijah looked back at him without expression. "You built a pretty good case against me," Elijah said quietly. "You just forgot one thing." Trevor said nothing. "You forgot I was still in here," Elijah said. "The whole time." Vanessa stood in the doorway throughout all of this, her brother's face dissolving, the attorneys on her porch, the neighbors on the sidewalk, Warren Ashford standing in the sun like a verdict. When the immediate legal business was done, Elijah turned to her. He reached into his jacket and produced a document. He held it out. She took it. She opened it. Divorce papers, already prepared, already signed by Elijah on his line. She looked up at him. He said, "You stopped believing in me long before the world did." He said it without cruelty, without satisfaction. He said it the way you say a true thing when it no longer needs to hurt anyone, when it just needs to be said clearly so everyone can hear it and move forward. She didn't respond. He didn't wait for a response. He crouched back down at Ava's level. "I'll call you tonight," he told her. "And I'll be there Saturday morning. Same as always." Ava nodded. She still had his hand. She let go slowly. He walked back down the flagstone path. The same path he had stood at the end of 22 months ago with $14 and nothing. And he got into the Lamborghini. Warren got in beside him. The car pulled away. Trevor Okafor was indicted 6 days later. His attorneys negotiated. The Crestview Capital connection drew federal interest. By the end of the month, he was facing charges that would occupy the next several years of his life and cost him everything he had spent a decade accumulating. Vanessa signed the divorce papers 11 days after they were served. She kept the house. What remained of it was largely what Elijah didn't want back. Warren Ashford's offer was not a gift. He was precise about this when he laid out a $1.2 million investment in a new transportation venture, structured as a partnership, with Elijah holding controlling operational interest. Not charity, not pity. A business decision made by a man who had spent his entire career investing in character and had never once regretted it. Elijah named the company Walker Transit Group. He hired Dorian, the mechanic who had helped fix the van, as his first full-time employee. Within 6 months, he had 11 vans, 3 hospital contracts, and a waiting list of drivers who wanted to work for a company where the owner knew every job from the inside. Within a year, he had expanded to 2 additional cities and was negotiating a 4th hospital contract. The magazine was a regional business publication, the kind that ran profiles on Atlanta entrepreneurs. The cover photograph showed Elijah in his office, jacket off, looking directly at the camera with the expression of a man who understood completely how he had arrived where he was. The headline read, "Built from Zero, How One Man's Integrity Became the Foundation of a $1 million Business." Vanessa saw it at a coffee shop. She picked it up. She read the whole thing. There was a line near the end where the interviewer had asked Elijah what had kept him going during his lowest point. He had paused before answering. The journalist wrote and then said, "I had a daughter watching me." You find out who you are when someone you love needs you to be exactly that person. Vanessa set the magazine down on the table. She sat there for a while. She finally understood, not the way you understand things when someone explains them to you, but the real way, the kind that costs something. The man she had called a burden was the foundation she had thrown away. And some things, once thrown away, don't come back. They just build something new, something better, somewhere else, without you. If this story hit you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the people who call you a burden are usually the ones who can't afford what you're actually worth.